Broadcasting live from Shibuya, Tokyo, this is your host, Aaron Randall. Welcome to American Hot Topics. Today we're going to talk about various and new items that are hot and trending in America. Things that are most commonly unknown to Japanese. Today's program is brought to you by Kotobanku.
この番組は某国立大学で英語を教えているアーロンと英語学習中のジュンがお送りいたします。
This week we're going to talk about the new Canadian Prime Minister. Hello everyone and thank you so much for joining us on another episode of American Hot Topics. This is Aaron. I'm here with June. We're in Shibuya and it is getting quite hot now. So, let's maybe start off this week with an election update.
もうほぼほぼ結果出たんですよね。
Yes, the inevitable has happened. With the Republicans, Donald Trump is now considered to be the Republican frontrunner for 2016. With Ted Cruz dropping out of the race, Trump now has 1,161 delegates and only 1,237 delegates are needed for the nomination, right? The next Republican primary is in Washington state. With the Democrats, Hillary is considered to have the nomination, but there is still hope for Bernie Sanders, according to a lot of media sources. Clinton currently holds 1,768 delegates, while Bernie has about 1,494. So Bernie won the most recent Democratic primary in Oregon State, so he's still pushing hard through this.
最終的にはいつ頃結果出るんですか？
So the deciding ground for both the Democratic and Republican nomination will be the convention in California. Now, this is June 7th. With 172 delegates up for the Republicans and 475 delegates up for the Democrats. However, with a lot of Republicans and Democrats unhappy about the Trump and possible Clinton nomination, we may be heading into a contested convention for both parties come this summer.
いやもう本当にトランプになったらどうしよう。ちょっと緊張してきたわ。
Yeah, I know. I think a lot of people are thinking the same thing. You know, if we talk about politics, I've got to talk about someone who has been trending on social media in America. His name is Justin Trudeau, and he is the current Prime Minister of Canada. He's risen to popularity for his youth, opinions, and honestly, his good looks.
カナダの首相？
Justin Trudeau.
ジャスティン・トゥルドー。
Mm-hmm.
あ、本当だ、確かにエドワード・ノートンとトム・クルーズを足して2で割ったような感じのイケメンですね。
Yes, he does have that appearance, right?
全然知らなかったですけど、この人が人気なんですか？イケメンだからなんですか？
No, not just because his good looks, right? He has some pretty progressive opinions that a lot of liberal Americans are fans of. Also, he's turning out to be extremely popular and is setting unprecedented examples of leadership for the rest of the world.
マジでノーマークでしたね。
Yeah, you know, a lot of Americans consider parts of Canada to just be almost other states.
それカナダ人から見てどうなのか聞いてみたいですけどね。
It might not be so good from a Canadian's perspective, right? You know, for example, when bands go on tour in North America, they often play shows in Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver. These are all Canadian cities on the US-Canadian border, so there really isn't so much of a feeling that Canada is a different country. You know, with entertainment, there is a very seamless feel between the US and Canada. You know, there are many famous Canadian actors and singers in America.
あ、確かにカナダ出身の人っていっぱいいますよね。
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know, to name a few famous actors from Canada, we have Ryan Gosling, Mike Myers. The two lead stars from the Matrix movies, Keanu Reeves and Carrie-Anne Moss, are both Canadian. Corey Monteith.
彼とか確かに普通にアメリカの高校生役やってましたからね。訛りとかも全然やっぱないんですか？カナダとアメリカで。
Well, there's not really a big difference in accent, especially with Canadians who come from the big cities. But Canadians from the countryside definitely have a bit of a Canadian accent, though.
まあまあそれはアメリカもそうですもんね、田舎に行けば。
And then, to name a few famous musicians from Canada, we have Justin Bieber, Avril Lavigne. Grimes is also from Canada, and Carly Rae Jepsen. And also, the biggest rap star in America right now, Drake, is also from Canada. You know, actually, before looking this up, I didn't know a lot of these people were Canadian. Only after researching this online did I realize.
芸能人の出身地とかあんま気にしないですもんね。
Absolutely. That's very true, yeah.
アーロンさん自体はカナダ行ったことあるんですか？
Yes, I went to the Montreal Jazz Festival when I was in high school.
おお、マジでモントリオールって北米のパリですよね。
Yes.
ノートルダム大聖堂がめっちゃ綺麗な、写真しか見たことないけど。
Yes, man, the city was absolutely beautiful. It is filled with French architecture and amazing food. One of the most multicultural cities I've ever been to.
行ったんだ。あれケベック州
Right, it's in the province of Quebec.
だからパリっぽいんですよね。モントリオールジャズフェスティバル行ってみたい。
Yes, yes. It may not be the biggest jazz festival in the world, but it's probably the highest ranked. Only the best play at Montreal.
俺、阿佐ヶ谷ジャズフェスティバルにしか行ったことない。
You know, at Montreal, man, you got like Hirome Uehara, Paco de Lucia, Chick Corea. These are the kinds of musicians that perform at Montreal. So this was technically my first time out of the United States.
さっき高校の頃って言ってました？
So I went during the summer of my junior year in high school. It was right after 9/11 in the early 2000s.
誰と行ったんですか？友達？
Yeah, so I went with 4 other close friends. They were actually all friends I played in bands with. We were all huge jazz fans. I mean, we studied this stuff. So we decided to finally see our heroes play live and take a road trip up to Montreal for the summer.
めちゃめちゃ楽しそうじゃないですか。青春じゃないですか。
Yeah, it was definitely one of the most memorable experiences of my youth.
どうやって行ったんですか？
The 5 of us actually packed into a small rental car.
やべえ、映画っぽい。ロードムービーっぽい。
Yeah, it was.
フロリダからモントリオールってもう、沖縄から北海道のもう北の果てぐらいの距離ありますよね。
Yes, yes.
どれぐらい時間かかるんですか？
It was an extremely long drive. We actually drove to Montreal from Florida. It's about a 22-hour drive.
高校生元気ですね。
You know, when we finally crossed the Canadian border, all of the signs were in French. This was like, long before I was interested in foreign languages, and I remember feeling pretty terrified. So, in being overly excited to see our jazz heroes and also being a bunch of idiot teenagers, we actually got our car stolen on the first night.
車盗まれた。
Yes, yes.
最初の夜に。
Yes, it was terrible.
どこで
on the side of the street in the middle of Montreal downtown.
一応着いてから。
Yes, after we arrived. So we actually drove up there with an American car. And at the time, all Canadian cars had a tracking chip installed in them. So us having an American car that, had United States written on it was an easy target for thieves.
はい。
Yeah. So on the first night of arriving in Montreal, we had all of our passports, cell phones, and tickets to the jazz festival stolen.
で、どうなったんですか？
Well, all of us were pretty on edge and extremely stressed out about, having all of our stuff stolen. So the rest of the trip, everyone was kind of in a terrible mood. But we eventually got new tickets, right?
じゃあすごいもうみんなテンション下がりきったけど、一応見れはしたんですね。
Yes, we were able to go, yeah.
盗まれたものは帰ってきたんですか？
No, the car was never found.
じゃあ車とか弁償？
I think one of our friends had to pay for the cost of the car, actually.
厳しいっすね。
Yeah.
やっぱり外国って怖えんだな。
This is my first trip too, man. My first time.
車とか盗まれちゃうんですね。
Yeah. But, since our passports and everything were in the car, our biggest fear was, getting back to the States. But one of our friends had pretty well-known parents in Canada and helped us get our passports back. So we ended up repurchasing tickets to the festival, enjoyed it as much as we could, and then flew back to Orlando.
はい。
But the worst thing out of all this was actually all of my friends were American-born Iranians, right? And this was right after 9/11. So whenever someone who's a American-born Iranian or American-born Middle Eastern person tries to get back into the States, whether or not they were born in the States or a naturalized citizen, it can be very difficult. And we're coming back to the States with no passports, right? So it just looks really bad, man. So we were really freaked out.
もしかしてそういう青春映画？
No, man, this really happened. This is a true story. So that's my personal story about Canada, right?
はい。で、カナダの首相のジャスティン・トゥルドーさんの話でしたっけ？
Yeah, so let's get back to James Trudeau. So Justin Pierre James Trudeau, born December 25th, 1971, is a Canadian politician who is the 23rd Prime Minister of Canada and the leader of the Liberal Party. He is the second youngest Canadian Prime Minister after Joe Clark. He's currently 44 years old, right? He earned a BA in English Literature from McGill University in 1994. He won the leadership of the Liberal Party in April 2013 and went on to lead his party to victory in the 2015 federal election, moving the third-placed Liberals from 36 seats to 184 seats, the largest ever numerical increase by a party in Canadian election. Forbes has ranked Trudeau the 69th most powerful person in the world.
全然知らなかったですけど、検索するとめっちゃ出てきますね。カナダの次期首相がイケメンすぎると世界中の女性がネットで騒然。ネットの声、カナダに移住する、やばいな、など。ジャスティン・トルドーは若くてイケメン、俳優やモデルのような甘いルックスにボクシングで鍛え上げたマッチョな肉体を持っています。カナダの名門マギル大学で英文学、ブリティッシュコロンビア大学で教育学の学位を取得した超インテリでもあります。大学を卒業後は教師として働き、2008年に下院議員に当選。しかし、残念ながらジャスティン・トルドーはすでに既婚者。2005年、モデルでテレビタレントのソフィー・グレア側と結婚し、美男美女カップルとして有名です。お父さんも元首相。もうパーフェクトヒューマンじゃないですか。
Yeah, you know, this is what a lot of American girls are definitely thinking. So, not just his looks, but let's look at some of his policies, which is really what's making him popular on the internet. First, let's look at what he thinks about indigenous people.
Indigenous?
Yes. So, you know, the people that were living in Canada before explorers came to Canada.
原住民の人々ってことですね。
Right. So, Trudeau met with hundreds of chiefs at the Assembly of First Nations on December 7th, 2015, and laid out his philosophy and commitments to Canada's indigenous people to assure their constitutionality, guaranteed rights, a sacred obligation. He promised to end government policies that are in conflict with their rights, make a significant investment in education programs, increasing general funding, and launching an inquiry into missing and murdered indigenous women.
はいはい。じゃあ今まで憲法上ではその先住民の権利保護が一応書かれてたのに、全然実効的ではなかったってことですよね。
Correct. And this is true for Canada and America alike. So, from an American's perspective, this is very interesting. American politicians would normally never talk about indigenous people. Like Canada, America has a very bloody history with Native Americans and the people who occupied the land before explorers arrived. In America, though, we have a habit of not bringing up any of this history to light and not recognizing the voices of modern leaders of indigenous peoples. Trudeau addressing this issue head-on is very inspiring. So the next policy Trudeau is really big on is feminism. Justin Trudeau is an outspoken feminist. His cabinet consists of 50% men and women. A heavy Twitter user, he often posts about feminism, but every time he mentions it, the Twitterverse explodes, he says.
Twitterverse って Twitter のユニバースみたいなこと。
Right, right, right.
それが Explodes.
Yes.
超盛り上がってるってことね。
Absolutely, right? It becomes like a trending topic on Twitter. So Trudeau says, I'm going to keep saying loud and clear that I am a feminist until it's met with a shrug.
Met with a shrug?
Mm-hmm.
Shrug って肩をすくめるみたいなことですね。
Right, right. Kind of lift your shoulders up a little bit. So, for example, if someone says, I have a smartphone, maybe you'd say, so what?
だからその肩をすくめて、だから何みたいな感じに、昔はスマートフォンを持ってたら、なんかすげえじゃんみたいになったかもしれないけど、今そんなことを言われても、何ってなるようにフェミニズムもなるまで頑張るってことですね。
Exactly, yes. So basically he's saying he will keep calling himself a feminist until it becomes normal and 100% socially acceptable. The 44-year-old liberal leader said calling himself a feminist simply means I believe in the equality of men and women. He called on world leaders to follow Canada's lead when appointing their own cabinets. Asked where his commitment to gender equality originated, he cast it as a fight between generations. He said, for my generation and younger, it's all sort of duh. The fact that it gets such a reaction from the powers and the authority structure that surrounds us really shows how much work we still have to do. So actually, the video of the speech where Justin Trudeau first rose to mass popularity was when he announced his cabinet. When Justin Trudeau was elected, he created a cabinet that was equally men and women, right? And asked to explain the gender parity, he answered, because it's 2015.
かっこいい
Yeah.
日本の政府にも入ってほしいんですけど。
No, me too, man. I wish this guy would, run for president in the US. I mean, like, if we compare this guy to Donald Trump, it's ridiculous. So let's look at a few quotes from Donald Trump about his views on women. The first one. It really doesn't matter what the media writes as long as you've got a young and beautiful piece of ass.
これはまあトランプが俺には若くて綺麗な女がいるからメディアが何書いても全然俺気にしないぜ、俺は勝ち組だぜみたいな。
Exactly. So, he's being very objective of women. Next, he said, I think the only difference between me and the other candidates is that I'm more honest and my women are more beautiful.
これも完全に女性をアクセサリー扱いして俺のアクセサリー超綺麗だぜみたいな。
Absolutely. The possessive nature of this comment makes it very sexist, as if women belong to him.
でもトランプを支持しているその白人労働者層っていうのはこういうトランプのオスっぽさっていうかボスザル感に、男はやっぱりこうでねえとみたいな感じで共感してるんですかね。
No, that's absolutely correct. And it's pretty embarrassing for America to have its next to be president as a supposed racist and sexist Donald Trump, while, Canada, right next door, is touting the most progressive leader the world has possibly ever seen.
でも2015年だからっていうのは個人的な文脈ですけど非常に共感しますね。
Yeah? Which part?
今インターパラメンタリーユニオンっていう国際機関が出してるデータ見てるんですけど、例えば日本の国会の女性議員割合って 11.6% なんですね。でも日本の人口比率でいうと女性100に男性105でほぼ1対1なんで、女性議員の割合って明らかにおかしい。で、じゃあその原因は何かっていうと、その性差ゆえに不可避なところもあるかもしれないですけど、それ以上にその歴史的経緯があるわけじゃないですか。家父長制とか、そのもっと古ではマンモス狩るのは基本男とか。
Right. So, hunting is a man's job. And also, war is a man's job, right? Therefore, the strong and macho are the ones who succeeded and led us through periods of war. I can say that given the current conditions of developed countries and societies, that people in general do not have to participate in war or focus on physical strength anymore.
そうそう、昔はジャイアンが偉いジョックス社会だったんですよね。マッチョはマッチョで素晴らしい才能ですけど。でも我々はテクノロジーの進化とともにマッチョ至上主義から脱却してきたわけですよ。で、2015年になってアーロンさんとか僕はもうすごい恩恵を受けてるわけじゃないですか。
Yeah. So, the playing field has been leveled for our generation. It's no longer about physical strength, but about intelligence and mental endurance.We're actually quite lucky to be alive in a time like this.
本当にね、我々引きこもりだからその原始時代に生まれてたらもう速攻死んでますよね。
Yeah, I would definitely be dead if I were all of a sudden transported back to the times of the Revenant, like early 1800s.
レベナントも見た？
Yes.Amazing.
はい。ナードの台頭と女性の台頭を同じ文脈で語ったら怒られるかもしれないですけど、オス的マウンティングからの脱却っていう意味では、フェミニズムにもとても共感できるっていう。
Right. So maybe because of these conditions, nerds were able to prosper the same as women. But women might get offended by this statement. I can say, though, that it's not a fight against physical strength anymore. It is a mental fight now in which anyone can participate. So yeah, I would probably agree with you and with feminism in general.
続きましてミニコーナー今日の英単語。アルさん、これが本日のリストになります。
Alright, so here is this week's word list. Indigenous, native people, original people of a certain place. Shrug, to raise one's shoulders slightly and momentarily to express doubt, ignorance, or indifference. Numerical, relating to or expressed as a number or numbers.Assembly, a group of people gathered together in one place for a common purpose. Inquiry, an act of asking for information. Murdered, kill someone unlawfully and with premeditation. Cabinet, the committee of senior ministers responsible for controlling government policy. Duh, used to express comment on a foolish or stupid action.Prosper, to make successful. Endurance, the ability to endure an unpleasant or difficult process or situation without giving way.
今後技術が行き着くところまでいくともはや出産プロセスの女性依存もなくなってきたりするんですかね。
Well, if it gets that ridiculous, I think a lot of other problems are going to arise.
まあね、なんかジェンダーに限らずその決定論的なものがあんまり好きじゃないんでしょうね、我々。
Alright guys, thank you so much for listening on another episode of American Hot Topics. We will join you next week.